It has been almost 5 years since I last saw Carol, and that was at her wedding in California where she married her life partner, Rose. I was invited as a guest, and that was a double-edged sword. I have an obsession with her, Carol. I am infatuated with her and would have been in heaven had I been getting married to her. The chance of that ever happening was very slim because Carol is not only a lesbian but also a man-hater. The only reason she put up with me is because we were brought up together, our mothers were stepsisters, and maybe because I am a crossdresser. I guess that would make us cousins of some sort. In the intervening years since we last saw each other, I came into a bunch of money. I now work when I wish, as a freelance electronic technician, which leaves me plenty of time to pursue my other passion, cross-dressing. I usually spend a few weeks every so often at my other home where I am always Dawn Marie. When living as Dawn, I use those breasts that you glue to your chest with a special adhesive that holds them as place for several weeks, or you can remove them using a special solvent. I had planned on doing that for a few weeks, living as Dawn in my other house a few towns away from Ron's house, when out of the blue I got a phone call from Carol. She said that she and Rose were having problems and wanted to see me and to get away for a week or so. I gladly agreed to put her up for a few days and explained that I was being Dawn Marie for a while. I could see a lot of fun with this because I would have some company during this time away, and I would be in the presence of the only woman that I ever loved. She agreed that it might be fun too. I drove to the airport to pick her up dressed as Dawn. I was going to be Dawn the entire time I was at my hideaway home because everyone there knew me as Dawn. I wore a blue long-sleeve top and matching blue and white checkered pants. I mentally made a few plans for the next couple days. I wondered if Carol had changed any since we last saw each other. I know I had not. I weighed the same as before and had the same size waist. While waiting for her plane, I thought about some of the fun we used to have as kids. We almost always played together, and when we did, she usually forced me to take the female role when we played house, and made me wear the dress. I enjoyed playing the mommy and looked forward to playing. She, Carol, never wanted to wear dresses and would fight with her mother when she made Carol wear one. There was this one Thanksgiving Day when they came to my house for Thanksgiving dinner. Carol had to wear this pretty dress, and it was easy to see that she was uncomfortable wearing it, and I made fun of her. It would be hours before dinner and my mom told me and Carol to go for a walk while they finished cooking. I, just to bust chops, changed into a sweatshirt and jeans. We went to the park where a bunch of kids were getting up a football game, and naturally Carol wanted to play. There was no way she could do it in a dress, much less the fancy one she was wearing. I did the worst thing I could do. I laughed at her and said it was too bad she wasn't wearing jeans like I was. There was a public toilet behind the bleachers, and she took my hand and pulled me to the girls' room. I had no idea what she was doing but soon learned. She was always stronger than me, and I think I was a bit scared of her, so when she made me take off my clothes and change with her, I put up a struggle that I knew I would lose. Of course, I had to be punched in the stomach a few times before I did it. In about 5 minutes I was in her dress and she was in my shirt and pants. Ordinarily I would have done it willingly, but that would have been home, not here in public and with a bunch of kids all around. Carol was always the resourceful one. She went to a closet in the bathroom and got out a sign that read "out of order" and a padlock. She locked me in while she went to play football for about an hour while I sat in the public toilet trying to keep the dress clean. I got real nervous a few times when someone tried to get into the bathroom. Finally the game was over, we changed clothes and went home for Thanksgiving dinner. Of course I got in a bit of hot water because my clothes were dirty. Her plane arrived and I waited for her by the gate. I wondered if she had changed since we last saw each other. Well, she did change a bit. She seems to have put on a bit of weight, and it looked like she grew an inch or two from where I stood, and her taste in clothes was still the same. She was wearing her usual t-shirt and jeans. I also noticed that she looked like a weightlifter, and like a female weightlifter she seemed to have no breasts, or at least very small, almost non-existent breasts. I had hoped that since getting married she would have at least started wearing a skirt. She did wear one the weekend of her wedding along with the very pretty wedding gown that she let me try on when I went to California to attend. I made my way to her and took advantage of being at an airport. I hugged her and gave her a big kiss right on her sweet lips. I guess I forgot that I was Dawn for a second because she seemed quite surprised to have a strange woman hugging and kissing her. As soon as she realized who I was, she hugged me back. We greeted each other for a few seconds, then went to pick up her luggage. At the carousel, I saw a set of matching pink luggage and an overnight case which I instinctively knew didn't belong to her, so I grabbed the 2 duffel bags which I knew did. Not too much was said until we got to the car, then we both started talking at once. She told me that she and Rose were finished and that Rose left her for another woman over a year ago, so she, Carol, just wanted to get away for a while and knew that she could always count on me to be there for her. I picked up on the divorce right away and for just a nanosecond thought that there might be a chance for me. It was near lunchtime by the time we got home, so we stopped for a bite to eat and I could tell her all about my life in the past 5 years. I told her about my coming into all that money and that I really didn't need to work and only occasionally took a job to have something to do. I told her that I was on an extended vacation, if a person who doesn't have a job can really call it a vacation. She kept looking at me a bit strangely and I couldn't understand why. She had seen me as Dawn thousands of times as we grew up. I was reminded of that Christmas when our mothers, unbeknownst to us, bought us identical Christmas presents, matching dresses. I think somewhere I told you that my mother and Carol's both not only knew about my cross-dressing at that early age, but approved and sometimes encouraged it. I think we were 10, maybe 11 years old at the time. Our moms thought it would be cute to dress us as sisters because that is the way we, Carol and I, thought about ourselves when I was dressed. The dresses were cute and identical. Naturally, if you give a boy and a girl a dress each, one of them will hate it and one will love it. In the topsy-turvy world we lived in, I, the guy, loved my dress and Carol hated it, but we both wore them all day. They were white with some sort of a diamond pattern on them. They came to just below our knees and had some stiff netting to push our skirts out. If I remember correctly, they had a black belt that tied in a bow in front. They had short puff sleeves and we were given yellow flower corsages for our chest because we were still too young to have breasts. I felt so grown up in mine while, as you can probably suspect, Carol hated hers. I was so careful not to spill anything on mine while I think Carol made it a point to get hers soiled in the hopes that she would be allowed to change. She wasn't. Her mother made her keep her dress on all day. She said that if Carol wanted to be a slob, it was her fault. We finally got home and I helped Carol carry her bags into the house where I showed her room. We talked as I watched her unpack. Why was I not surprised that the only feminine things she had were her panties and bras? Knowing her, I knew that they would be white cotton. It was well into the middle of the afternoon by the time we were finished unpacking and getting her room straightened out, so I thought I would change and take her for a drive around town. I changed into a pair of white shorts and a red sleeveless top, she, in her usual, a white t-shirt and jean shorts. She saw me and gave a wolf whistle. "You always did have great legs," she said. We spent about an hour driving around town while I showed her all the hot spots. It didn't register at the time, but later that evening I realized that although I have a big car and the top was up, she sat right next to me. I remembered it that night after supper, which she made. She was always a good cook, but what she made was simple but good. I have lots of packages of ramen noodles. She cooked a couple of packages and opened a can of stewed tomatoes and mixed them, making a good meal. After the dishes were done, which I did myself, whether it was because I was the woman or because she was the guest doesn't matter. When I went into the living room to watch TV, I saw her sitting on the end of the couch with one arm over the back. I started for my favorite chair when I remembered the way she was sitting in the car, right up next to me, and now she is sitting with her arm up along the back of the couch. I did what anyone would do in that position. I went and sat next to her. Sure enough, she had her arm around my shoulder in a few minutes, so I snuggled up against her and we watched TV until I felt tired. I excused myself and went to change into my nighties. A set of blue baby dolls with matching panties. Returning, I sat next to her again. Is this any way for a 27-year-old guy to be acting with the girl of his dreams? I don't know, but that is the way I was acting, and you got to admit, this was a unique situation and I don't think all the rules apply here. All I knew was that I was in the arms of the one I love, and that was that. I just wished she would kiss me. If the situation was reversed and she was in my arms, not only would we be kissing, but I would be thinking of a way to get into bed with her. It was well after 11 o'clock and I was dead tired, so I excused myself and headed for my room. I was still awake later when I heard the TV go off and Carol go to her room, which was next to mine, hoping that she would do the right thing and crawl into bed with me, but I really knew that that would never happen. The next thing I knew was that the sun was streaming in my window and it was morning. I showered and got into a green tank top and wet flared skirt that came to well above my knees. Carol always did tell me I had nice legs. I was just finishing making coffee when she walked into the kitchen wearing what I supposed was her sleepers, her sports bra, and a pair of boxer shorts. I poured her a cup of coffee and we had breakfast together. After breakfast and some more chit-chat, I proposed that we spend the day on the boardwalk. She, not surprisingly, wore her usual uniform, shorts and a loose t-shirt. As we were going out the door, I got a glimpse of us and had to smile at what I saw. Carol asked what was so funny, so I showed her. I led her to the full-length mirror on the inside of the door. I showed her the attractive young couple holding hands, the girl in a short skirt and the guy in shorts and a t-shirt, and I was the girl and she the guy. It was a short drive to the beach, so I allowed her to drive, and this time I snuggled up close to her as I would if I was a woman out for a drive with her boyfriend. I realized that I sound like a teenage girl out with her main squeeze, and I think I felt like one too, but I was going to take advantage of the situation of being close to the woman I have been infatuated my entire life from my mid-teens. She didn't seem to have a problem, so I was going to push as much as possible. We spent almost all day at the boardwalk shopping and eating and just walking around like two lovers. I never wanted the day to end, but rather than risk my going too far and ruin what I had, and to avoid getting a sunburn, we headed home with a few bags of souvenirs. We stopped at a pizzeria for lunch and noticed a small group of kids in one corner. It looked like they were having a birthday party. Carol nudged me and looked at the group. It was a group of young girls, and indeed one of them was having a birthday party. They were all dressed in party dresses, something you don't see too much anymore. These days it seems as if girls all want to look like boys, even at parties when they should be dressed up in fancy dresses. Carol leaned over to me and whispered to me, "Do you remember our 10th birthday party?" It took me a few seconds to remember what she was talking about. Our birthdays are no more than a week apart, and for as long as I could remember we celebrated them together at one house or another. Since we were 8 and my mother started letting me dress as a girl, we usually had them at Carol's house so that I could attend as Dawn Marie, because Carol lived across town and no one there knew I was not a girl. We spent most all holidays at her house for the same reason. We, Carol and I, used to think that maybe we should just change places with each other, because I would rather dress up in a fancy dress for parties and such, while Carol would rather wear her t-shirts and jeans. She even told me that if she ever got married and had to wear a wedding gown, it would be made of denim. On the occasions when she had to wear a dress, she would be out of it as soon as possible while I wore mine all day. But I digress. I was telling you about our 10th birthday party. Naturally, it was to be at Carol's house. The night before, my mother gave me my birthday present, at least one of them. It was a lovely dress that I had seen many times at the mall and even showed it to my mom on more than one occasion. I was surprised to see it when I opened the box. Mom said that I could wear it to Carol's tomorrow for our party. She hardly ever let me go out of the house as Dawn Marie at home because she was afraid that someone might see me, so I usually changed at Carol's. I woke up early the next morning, way before my mother, and it seemed like hours before she woke up and we had breakfast. Then it was time for me to get dressed. Mom said she would help me. I started out with, as usual, panties and a vest or cami, which had a thin pink ribbon around the neck opening and shoulder straps. My dress was light blue with an embroidered bodice and short puff sleeves, and the skirt was full and pushed out from the waist to the knee-length hem by a stiff petticoat and had a thin blue belt which Mom tied at the back in a big bow. I remember giggling when I looked at myself in the mirror. Mom asked what I thought was so funny. I told her that I thought it was funny that I, a boy, was excited about wearing such a pretty dress while I knew that Carol was probably fighting because her mother was making her wear one. My dress came with a cute little straw hat and a pair of white gloves and a white purse. At least Mom got the gloves, hat and purse for me. I felt like a little princess riding to Carol's for our party. When I saw her all dressed, all I could think of was that she, the real girl, looked like a boy in a dress, while the real boy in a dress looked like a cute little girl. Maybe it was attitude that did it, because I wanted to wear a dress and look like a little girl while she would rather be in a t-shirt and jeans. The party was fun, especially for me because I got to kiss all the girls there when they gave me my gifts, and although I was young, I did enjoy being kissed by girls. The party was a lot of fun and we played some games, but all too soon it was over. As usual when in dresses, Carol couldn't wait to get out of hers while I wanted to keep mine on as long as possible. We finished our pizza and headed home. I let Carol drive. Sitting next to her on the ride home, she had her hand on my leg and several times her hand went up my short skirt. Under other circumstances this might be a bit embarrassing, but then there would never be other circumstances. I never would be out with a guy. I am a cross-dresser and purely heterosexual. I would like to take a few lines here to explain a few things. In some of my stories I have received some well-meaning, and probably correct, flack of my usage of sexual description. Carol is not a TG or a TS or any kind of sexual transformation person. She is a female, albeit a husky female, who is also a lesbian, so I believe I am right referring to her as she. We had planned on going out that night. It was Saturday, and when here, in my Dawn Marie local, I usually got all decked out in a fancy, but just short of formal, dress and went for supper at an expensive joint and then to a show. We were both a bit tired, so we took a short nap before getting dressed. Just for fun, and maybe a 1 in 1,000 chance, I showed Carol my extensive wardrobe and told her that she could borrow anything she wanted if it fit. To tell the truth, I didn't think it would happen either way. There was no way she would have fit into most of my gowns, and even if she did, she wouldn't want to. She did, however, pull one out and asked if I would wear it that night. She said it was so pretty and she would be proud to be seen with such a pretty woman wearing so lovely a gown. I think I blushed a bit when she told me I was pretty. I showered first. While Carol showered, I started getting dressed. First I checked carefully that my boobs were still firmly attached and did have to apply a drop of glue if a few places. I pulled on my pantyhose over a pair of panties that did almost nothing for holding my manhood in place. Because I have been taking minimum hormones for the past 3 years, mainly to keep my skin soft and slow my body hair growth, it also helped retarded growth there too. I still had a life as Ron to live, so I could not go too far. I was trying to get into a waist cincher when I heard Carol come out of the bathroom. "Hey Han," I called out, "can you give me a hand with this?" I turned around so she could get to the laces in the back. She laced me up and stood behind me as I stepped into my dress, which she zipped up for me. I could have done both myself, but when you have help, use it. The dress she picked out for me was bright red. It had a low, square neck with spaghetti straps and a tight waist. The knee-length skirt was pushed way out by a built-in crinoline, and it had a matching bolero-style jacket. I wore red high-heeled cross-strap shoes of about 3 inches. She was still standing behind me straightening my dress when she wrapped her arms around me and kissed the back of my neck. This was the first time ever she had kissed me other than hello or goodbye, and I loved it. Seeing as she started it, I would push as far as I could. I turned in her arms and kissed her on her lips, not just a buss, but a kiss, as if we were the lovers I so wanted to be. She returned it the same way. While she went to dress in her men's suit, I finished putting on my makeup and jewelry. We did make a lovely couple. When she was finished and came back to my room and saw how I looked, her jaw dropped. "I don't understand why some lesbian hasn't tried hooking you. You are so gorgeous." She said. "Sweetheart, you know there is only one lesbian in my life," I said with a wink. I handed her my jacket, which she helped me into, grabbed my red purse and elbow-length gloves, and took her hand. She helped me down the stairs like a gentleman would help his woman. I again gave her the keys to lock up and stood by the car waiting for her to hold the door open for me. I climbed in, and as I did that afternoon, I snuggled up close to her. The valet helped me out and parked the car while Carol and I went inside. We ate, and as I would do if I was alone, and I am always alone, this being the first time I was with someone, we went to a play in the same building. One of the waitresses who usually attended me whispered to me, "This guy is cute, he looks like a keeper." Before going home we stopped for a drink, but only one for Carol. She was doing the driving. I allowed myself to get just a bit tipsy. This had been the best day ever as far as I was concerned. Spending the entire day with the woman I loved and using pet names all day, and spending the evening with her, I was wondering how much farther I could go and was just tipsy enough to push the limit. When we got home I asked her to help me out of my dress. I had trouble reaching the back zipper. She came to my room with me. I turned my back to her while she unzipped my dress, then turned and took her in my arms and kissed her as my dress dropped to the floor. I was in just my panties and bra as we held our kiss. I stepped back and took her jacket off, then started unbuttoning her shirt. She did nothing to stop me, so I continued undressing her until she was as semi-naked as was I. She was in her t-shirt and boxers and I in my bra and panties. I took her hand and led her to my bed. She got the idea because she crawled into bed with me. That night we became lovers, but as is always the way with her, she played the dominant male while I was the submissive female and was on bottom both times. I fell asleep wrapped up in her arms. The next day I woke to a bright morning. I looked over at my sleeping beauty and smiled, remembering last night. I climbed out of bed only to realize that I was still in my panties and bra. I reached for her shirt and put it on as a robe. It looked like a mini dress on my slight frame. I buttoned it up as far as my breasts and went downstairs to make some coffee. The coffee was just finishing when she made an appearance, still in her shorts and tee. She crossed the kitchen and kissed me, telling me how sexy I looked in her shirt. I made us both breakfast. Carol went and got dressed while I did the dishes. She dressed and asked to borrow my car, saying she had something to do. I asked if she wanted me to go along, but she told me no, that I should stay home and make myself beautiful. I put on a pair of pink capri pants but kept her shirt on after putting a silver belt around my waist. I looked and felt like a teenage girl after her first sexual encounter. Last night and this morning were the best thing that had ever happened to me, and I hoped that things would continue. I was living a lifelong dream. I finally showed her how much I love her and she responded in kind. I just hoped the rest of the day would be as great because she was leaving in the morning to go back home to her business. It was about 2 hours later that she came back and had what we used to call a shit-eating grin on her lovely face. She didn't tell me where she went and I didn't ask. All I knew was that she greeted me with a kiss and called me sweetheart. I couldn't ask for more. I made sandwiches for lunch. We spent the rest of the day out in the backyard basking in the sun. She told me she was again taking me out for supper to the fanciest restaurant in town. It took me about an hour to decide on what to wear and decided on a little black dress and my white fur stole. She wore a black suit and again we looked like an average couple out on the town, except for the role reversal. Supper was delicious and we danced a few dances before dessert. Carol got the waiter's attention and mentioned that we were ready for dessert. "Very good, sir," he said and walked away. I didn't remember ordering any dessert, but I assumed that it came with the meal. The waiter returned with a small silver-covered tray. It didn't look like it held much food, but he placed it in front of me. Carol told me to take the top off, which I did. I almost pissed my pants when I saw a red velvet ring case open to show a beautiful engagement ring and a small handwritten note with "Will you marry me?" I did not know what was going on. Was this a joke, or was she proposing to me? She leaned over and took the ring from the case, got on her knees and asked, "Well, my sweet love, will you marry me?" It took me a few seconds before I could find my voice to answer with a resounding yes. Yes. It took another minute to realize that my childhood sweetheart, the girl of my dreams, finally broke down and realized how much I loved and adored her. The waiter brought us a small bottle of champagne with the manager's compliments. That night was a repetition of last night, but about 1,000,000 times more heavenly. The next day she left for home with the promise that she would be back in about a week so we could make arrangements for our upcoming wedding, her second, and my first. On the drive home from the airport, I had a few questions myself. Who is she marrying, Ron or Dawn Marie? Where will we live? I have 2 houses and she one. Where will the wedding take place? California would be good for me. I knew a lot of people there from my last visit 5 years ago, and a few other questions, but the answer, as far as I was concerned, was, who cares, as long as we got married.